Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to tonight's episode. The title arose to me. Could the Gaian mind be fating human ability? And usually when I come to give these talks, there's something sensitive, something I've noticed, and I'm constantly throughout the whole talk trying to paint that. The thing is, I guess I can start from where my curiosity started in character development. You see, we can't ignore how we as human beings, we have an outer realm which we're existing, and we have an inner realm which we are experiencing our own existence. And because we are experiencers in existence, we have a relationship as a self in a world. Now, our civilization, the world we're living in, its knowledge is human knowledge, and the human is the idea we're giving for ourselves. So, with our current knowledge, ability arises from the self. People are going to educational systems, to various kinds of systems, to increase their ability, really. Now, what's interesting is ability that comes from self moves the self. That means right now I'm using this pen in my hand, and this movement of this pen in my hand, it's coming from myself. That means even though the world is keeping me here, but the way the pen is moving in my hand, that ability arises from the self. Now the question says, could ability come from the Gaian mind, pretty much? Could the Gaian mind be fating human ability? That means ability is not dependent on just the self, just the person. It's also dependent on the natural event that takes place. How many times in our various narratives in media have we seen that once the protagonist of the narrative, once the hero has something to lose, then suddenly the ability, the heroism, the power comes. It's like once the circumstance is there, where the character is limited, the character surpasses its own limits. So, pretty much the idea is it because of the environment the self finds itself able, or is it because of the self alone? For example, a soccer player, let's say a striker of a soccer team. That striker, its ability in kicking the ball in the net comes alone. But the opportunity for the ability to perform alone comes from so many things having to be there from before. That means everybody on this planet currently who is, you see it in regards to celebrities and, you know, the stars of media and whatnot. It's as if in one dimension there is advancement, but so many things had to advance before that opportunity is even possible. It's as if, like, you imagine the person in 10 years, they're going to be working for a very big company, but they don't know that. And so imagine they're passing that company every day, not realizing that 10 years from now they're going to be running it, for example. I'm just trying to say sometimes the ability, we don't even know it's there. Until I found a soccer ball when I was young, I couldn't know I could dribble people and in some sense be a good soccer player. That was like my childhood dream, do you believe it? And really, our lives are based on ability. Our jobs, our survival is based on our ability. Before, our survival was based on just surviving in the jungle. Like a wild animal attacked us and we had to hold the jaw of the lion open. Or the saber-toothed tiger, we had to keep its jaw open and try to get to the next day. So ability is pretty much is as old as us. That means if we are around, it is because of some sort of ability. Now, the biggest question is, it can't be personality first, and the complex thing here is that the human has to be taught how to be a person. Literally, it has to be around society, it has to see human behavior to have the archetypes of being able to be in a human narrative to itself. Now, the idea is the earliest humans, they did not have enough of a reasoning ability to acknowledge each other as individuals. So it is fair to say that it was instinctual. That means it's like the only way we could have procreated and survived and knew how to procreate was instinctual. That means it's as if nature is our first teacher. That means everybody who's listening to these Mr. Within talks, go and touch the grass and bow to the earth. That's your first sensei. All those people who are mowing their lawn, you know, it's like bow to your sensei. So certain circumstances, situations, conditions in nature need to arise, and then there arises the human being. So we are conditional. So our ability is conditional. That means my ability to move this cup of coffee in front of me, it's based on me having a body. That means if I don't have a body, I don't have an ability to move anything with this body, right? So it's as if it's the precondition. And so any thing done this life, I feel there's preconditions, and those people who access abilities, they become familiar with those preconditions. So human ability wasn't human. We can say there was ability, nature's ability, which was our instincts, you know. That means before clothing, before the evolution of clothing even, we were just, you know, getting down and dirty, you know, in the jungles. Where my attention is going with this idea, guys, is simply I'm wondering about human ability, right? And I'm wondering about, okay, how do abilities arise? Is the ability dependent on the environment? Like if things are right, so why is it that there's a sort of karmic thing that when a bunch of people attempt something in one moment, one of them succeeds, the others don't, right? Karma is very evident. Karma, it's as if like the minds, how minds are being the moment, have something to learn. Aside from what happens to the body, you know, it's as if everybody gets at the end of any event, like, let me say it this way. Imagine the soccer player example. Those people who go on the soccer field, they each go into the soccer field with a mindset, and based on how they implement themselves, it's like their mindset suggests what they get out of the moment. I've tested my own karma. I'll be honest, I've tested it. I've had moments where I've inputted ignorance. That means it's a feeling. I've had this feeling, okay, I'm doing something off, karmically off, like the whole moment has this feeling, and I've just continued it, right? And by continuing it, I've noticed the aftermath of the ignorance of the moment, right? The biggest ignorance of the human being, and it's based on our design, really, because we have first-person point of view, like a video game, like a shooter video game. And because it's first person, we have to consider ourselves. That means if we were third person, we would be way more compassionate. Because life is in first person, we don't really see ourselves doing something. That means even if when I raise this coffee cup in the air, I don't see myself from like the corner of the room raising this coffee cup in the air. But if we could, our evolution and our psychology would be very different. We would have the contentment of the invisible witness there. Right? I have had moments where the inspiration of my ability, that means, let's say, a precondition to any sort of ability is passion or concentration. Passion is just concentration till outcome is achieved, really. It's like where the attention is suggests where the ability can come from. If someone notices a problem, I saw a video, this video, I don't know if it was today or yesterday, I saw it was showing this high school. It was like a trending video on YouTube. There's a trending section. Anybody who clicks on that trending section, you just get to see the most popular videos on YouTube. In one of those videos, it was like this kid saving this other kid's life using this kind of technique where the kid was suffocating on some food, and then his friend comes and saves, like literally, like, you know, a teenager saves this other teenager, and this YouTube video went viral, right? And there was something there that the kid had the knowledge, and once the emergency occurred, there was somewhere for that knowledge to go. So when a person's life becomes important, they don't just search for answers, it becomes a journey. Even the intellect becomes a journey. That means, I would say, the scholar's table perhaps sees it as never getting filled. That means it's like when one truly wonders about intelligence, at some point they will notice it comes to an unknown point. When it comes to an unknown point, the consciousness experiences its own solitude. This means, what if where your eyes are gonna go is different than where everybody else's eyes are gonna go? How would you then live in the world? And really, ability, one thing I gotta say, no ability comes until something is important. I'm telling you, it's as if the same reason why people cram. They keep things for the last day, then last second, because tomorrow is the most important day. They stay up all night. So honestly, if something is not sincerely important, I don't feel authentic ability arises. A person may be, let's say a person has an ability. Let's say you're a master swordsman, but back in the day you're like drunk at a tavern and like you have an ego and you're challenging somebody. You know, it's like the master swordsman may have the reliance on the skill, but there's always something more than the skill needed, and it's discretion and discrimination. That means this was really what changed the soldier into a general. Right, the general could discriminate, could notice the value of the pieces, the chess pieces on the chessboard. But the soldier could only see itself, or maybe at most prepare for its unit or like a group or something, you know. But to oversee the whole thing, check it out. It's like a bird who has to fly so high in the sky that it sees the whole forest. Right? This is why we find in a lot of military strategy they were like higher ground. Not just because it's difficult to attack, but at the same time the sight is more, you see more. You know, Sun Tzu in The Art of War talks about this balance of heaven and earth. And I thought, what if they didn't have a concept of gravity back then, right? When Sun Tzu was writing that book, he didn't have the concept of gravity, and people noticed that an object fell, right? They noticed that it was harder, for example. When you climbed a hill, it became harder, and they didn't have the same concept as gravity we have, right? So it could be that when they said like higher ground, there's more heaven than earth, it could be that it's gravity's on their side. When a bunch of people try to attack a hill, it's like you know, their weight's against them. So if what is important we suddenly have the energy for, let's say it's an emergency, everybody has the energy suddenly to run out of a building when there's an earthquake. You know, when there's something intense that happens, the energy arises, and the precondition to importance of bringing energy would be attention, really. What's in your attention suggests your reality. When I close my eyes, my inner realms are more in focus, so my reality goes in accordance. You know what it is? Me giving these talks, it's kind of like me speaking with my eyes closed, but my eyes are open when I speak. As if the vividness of the inner realm is to that degree. That means I would say now it's a point where it really doesn't matter the lighting in the room. The outer realms are what they are. That's the first thing. One notices about elemental reality. It has no problems. The periodic table is just chilling. So existence really on an atomic level doesn't have a purpose. Maybe on a cellular level, the purpose of the cell is to self-replicate. But on an atomic level, it's like, what are the dreams and ambitions of an atom? You know? And I feel this is really the grand mystery of human life. Where did meaningless, it's like when did, how, not just when, how and when, or why even, did meaningless atoms become a meaningful subject to themselves? That means, why should there even be human existence? Even a further question than that would be, should there even be creaturehood? What about a pool of energy tells you that it's going to end up being a universe? You see, whatever amount of knowledge we have, we can never explain the potential that is there if our knowledge is only based on what's in the observable universe. Imagine we realize in the unobservable universe is everything we could have imagined in the observable universe. We're like, no way, imagination was real, but just we were in the wrong room. I feel human ability really has to do with the Gaian mind. Excuse me. How do I explain it? It's like we have a view that this planet isn't alive. It's kind of like a room of space with stuff in it. If we treated the planet to be alive, then we can't consider human intelligence to be just human. So it would be as if we are not living on our planet, we are living with our planet. If we are living with our planet, and the planet was here before us, it's as if living with an intelligence that knows us better than we know ourselves. So it would be the justification for like ability and karma, and why certain moments, it's just their energy for that moment to go forth is there, you know. I have experienced moments where, regardless of what I did, it was as if like the moment was moving its own way. Regardless of the people, the psychology, the structure and function to just that environment, it was as if nature has its own plans. That means it's like a person can plant an apple tree, and that apple tree is going to give apples, and then they can just look at the apple tree and be like, I feel like I want lemons today, you know, and they can wait for an apple tree to give lemons. But the thing about the outer realms is that it's like a canvas. What is drawn in it moves in accordance to that. It's like it's programmable. The outer realms is very programmable. That's the strange thing. It can literally be changed by the being's energy, as if we are a chemical. The world we see in front of our eyes is a chemical. Our engagement, our interaction with it is like two chemicals reacting. Both are changed. Neither we are the same self, and neither the world is the same world, because there's been an energetic movement in it. You know, something's changed. Let's say everything in the universe froze. Everything like a video game was just paused, except one human being who could just blink one eye, right? Everything in the universe, imagine, was kept still in time. As if time paused, but only some strange odd reason one person's eyelid could just blink. That one blink, if everything stayed the same, would be enough to consider that there's a new world and the world has changed. That means every time we blink, we're changing the world, you know? Not just to ourselves, just like some new input has entered the system that wasn't there before. So imagine a species, a civilization where people are no longer trying to change the world. They realize we have been changing it. It's now how do we want to change it? Or which way do we want to point the sails of just human knowledge? Something that the educational system, I feel modern educational system has failed to teach is the wilderness that requires to activate superior ability. You know what it is? It feels like we are inside the mind of our planet's future. An example of that would be, let's say you were a soldier on a battlefield, you saw some intense stuff, you left the battlefield, and years later you got flashbacks of the battlefield. That's literally like the events in the battlefield took place, they were finished. Years later, in the future self, compared to who the person was in that battlefield, right, that future self is remembering its past. You know, so the future has no problem contacting the past. The past has a problem contacting the future. That means right now, when I look at my past, it's like I can observe, I can notice the breadcrumbs of how my psychology as a person developed in this world. Right, but when I think about my future, when I try to fathom my future, if it was set before I had made a decision, then free will wouldn't exist. That means the moment there's destiny, there's no such thing as a human being. I feel nature holds itself in a way that surpasses linguistic intelligence, which means it surpasses linear time. Pretty much it surpasses how we have understood stuff to change in space. If the planet is alive, and let's say the planet was like a giant turtle and civilization was built on its back, so we would need to find a way to contact this giant turtle, which all of civilization is made on its back. The planet is alive, we are alive. Now the planet is alive, but it doesn't mean the planet has a personality. We are alive through a personality. That means how can you be a human being? You gotta have a personality. If you don't have a personality, you can't literally call yourself human. You can call yourself a being, but not a human, right? The human is like it's like clothing for the invisible mind. It's something, believe it or not, our attention has to be on, right? It's like you can say, for many, it's like there's one view a person has to meditate. There's another view. It's like everything's like some beings are like their whole life is meditation. this is a perfect way, I think, a perfect attempt to explain it. The word human being. The human is conditional. The being is unconditional. Awareness is like uncontained experience, just being. And maybe this leads towards human being. Like, this is a good way to actually talk about ability, right? Ability for the human form is power, right? When you want to wonder about human power, it's pretty much like go, you know, it's like the Iron Man suit. It's either becoming a robot or like being inside a robot, something like that, right? So human power physically, right? Or we have the concept of, in an egoic way, like a person being powerful, you know, someone who's controlling a lot or something. When we wonder about the ability of just pure being, this is unconditional. That means any human being who, at just any moment in, I would say, let's make this universal, any moment in the universe that finds itself being unconditionally, that means there needs to be no self, there needs to be no world, there needs to be no doer, pretty much, right? And there's something being. That's the nature of awareness. And in the future, hopefully, they will, like children, will learn to just acknowledge their awareness, right? Most people don't acknowledge their mind. They don't see it as a force, right? As some sort of ability generation. Like if the person has any ability, it has to come from this mind, right? And especially when people are characters in a story, the ability is just the story, right? That's the motivation and inspiration we find. It's like, oh my God, people need motivation. Change the context. It's like, oh my God, people need enlightenment. Change the concept. So I'm honestly saying so much of life is just a storytelling. We're telling a story to ourselves, then this story, if it's strong enough, if the story the person is telling themselves is strong enough, then their free will feel comfortable to be in the outer realms. There is, believe it or not, there's this anime I want to talk about. This Japanese comic book made into a show called Black Clover. I recommend people to watch. I mean, people who care for storytelling to watch it, right? And in it, there's a very interesting concept. First of all, it's like the whole show is capitalizing on the idea of magic. And it's trying to see a world where right now it's as if the creators of, okay, I'll say it this way, it's set in a world where, like in our world, there is no magic. Magic is like hocus pocus, right? But in this universe, magic is like the norm. Everybody has this magical energy called mana or something, where there's characters in the story where they're said they're loved by mana, which is like the energy of the universe loves them, so it's like they have mana, they have power. So in this story, it's set in the concept of magic. And those loved by mana, first of all, these, okay, I'm getting too excited, so I'm jumping. In this anime called Black Clover, it's a magical universe. The story starts with these two orphan kids, and one of them has a lot of mana, a lot of power, a lot of ability, and there's one person who doesn't have ability, which is the main character. Now, each of these characters, when they reach a certain point in their lives, like a certain maturity, they go to this place and each of them gets a book. Each of them, it's as if the universe, the magical nature of the universe bestows each of them with a specific book that has to do with their character. If the person was kind, then their magic like mimics that. If the person was violent and savage, then their magic and their the mana expressed through them in the narrative demonstrates through that. Now, there's this kid who doesn't have any magic, and so he gets this kind of rough, like messed up book, and this book is anti-magic, and the whole, like, it becomes his advantage later on in the story. Now, if we were to consider, right now I'm talking about human ability, I'm talking about if nature is perhaps fading it, right? In that story, in that Japanese story, there was the concept of the universe being intelligent and the universe bestowing intelligence, right? As if it's not just human beings that love being on Earth, the Earth loves human beings, right? Imagine. So that would be where the fate of the human being is not just in accordance to human beings loving each other and being nice to each other. It has to do with human beings advancing the level of communication to a point where we're wondering if it's possible to be space. That means it's like you want to communicate to someone, you got to speak a similar language. Now let's say if we want to communicate to a universal being, what language can we have for a universal being, right? So it would be kind of like going to the core of that mana, right? Now in this story, there's these characters who have an ability where, because everything in the world is made of energy, the character in the story can feel the energy of the whole moment. Right now, people feel like maybe like the energy of their, like, I don't know, their body temperature. I mean, you're a Tai Chi master, you know, maybe you feel something else. But in this opposite, like pretty much the whole show is like an opposite fantasy version of what's going on in our current world, you know. It was as if because everything was filled with energy, the knowing was there before. So imagine somebody like these yogis that meditate, and in Vedanta and yoga, they were like, once the yogi meditates, they get certain powers. Now these powers, what was the term? Siddhi. These siddhis, these powers shouldn't be used by the yogi in an egoic way, because they are powers that come from the universal side of the being. That means if the person is bestowed some wisdom, some knowing, whatever, and this is from a universal position, its authorization into personality is very different. You can say everybody has a lot of ability, but how much ability is authorized in every moment to share is different. Now, there was different types of magic in this whole show, and this is, of course, it's fictional. I'm pretty much like an engineer talking about fiction, or trying to, but so they had different kinds of magic. I don't know. So one character had electricity, like as its power. One character had glass. It's different things in the universe had become their specific powers, as if like one person. And you know, it's another way of saying anything a human being concentrates in, right? Their life moves towards. If their life moves towards, they're getting exposed to. If they're getting exposed to, they're becoming. Now, there was one thing in this whole story which was supreme, that it was as if regardless of the type of magic that the characters had, the fate of the world, as if the world in this narrative, in this whole show, would bring back certain characters that were lost. Right? The character had been defeated and completely out of the picture, but suddenly would get a vision and come back, right? As if the world wasn't done, right? As if, imagine human beings are like different pencils and pens and, what's the term, utensils, like different colored pens, right? And so it's as if the planet is not done writing, and imagine the planet is drawing something and it wants to draw something with a blue pen, and it draws it. Now it puts the blue pen down and picks up the red pen, okay, and starts drawing, and then puts down the red pen and suddenly draws a little bit of the blue, puts down the blue, picks up the red. And now imagine the red and blue were human beings, and they're like, oh my God, what are you doing, God? You know? But God is painting the universe poetically. Because really, the word God is just a personification or the attempt to see intelligence in one singular universal position. That's really it. Because the idea, by definition, is even inconceivable. So people are worshipping the inconceivable. And the inconceivable can only be one, and the inconceivable is everywhere, and the inconceivable is what has no secondary. Pretty much, it could be hilarious that God was a metaphor for the unknown. Literally. But language, of course, is just the dust on the shoulder of a giant that can't even see its face in a mirror. Nature's walk and our ability to walk with nature suggests the greatest ability. I will make this conclusion because I have learned too well from the likes of Lao Tzu. You know, my eyes have seen enough quotes of Lao Tzu online to know better. At the edge of the efforts in the illusion, the effortless truth awaits. We're just characters in nature. We identify with the world. There's no need for a sense of self. We identify with only the sense of self. We're too busy looking at the self to see the world to care about. We have to literally take inner realm vacations from dual states of mind into non-dual states of mind, and even flights around the infinite and the void. Pretty much we need a massive rediscovery of everything kind of renaissance, global renaissance. I don't know how that's going to happen. Maybe one strategy is just run in the streets and be like, everything is a lie, oh my god, you know? Or another strategy is just asking the system, where are you going? Advancing civilization is as simple as that. It's wondering where the moment is going. Like, I know that my existence, I can tell where it's going. Throughout the years, like, the existence is like, has the same fate as the candle wax. But when it comes to my mind, I have this sense that the way I live will suggest the momentum of my entrance into whatever state of attention after this space-time continuum. Right? So it's as if life is not just about accumulation. It's not about just finding a nice chair to sit on. And honestly, maybe a couple hundred years ago, we could have said it was all about happiness, but now it's not just about happiness. Now it's about, you can say, efficient happiness. That means if the happiness, if we can get a collective backup system that doesn't falter going, right? Then it's as if it makes sense to sacrifice the individual joy, right? So it's as if it's like a sacrifice between service and joy life, usually. When you're younger, you want to sacrifice service for joy, right? But later on, I find in life, service becomes like where life is really at, because people realize they're temporary. So what is the strategy? You take to remain, but eventually you're going to exit, so you give all you can before you exit. So it's as if human beings should donate any efficient vision they have to their species before they enter the void. Right? The poet Rumi says, before death takes away all that is given, give away all there is to give. Why? Because your pockets are going to be empty at that. You know, it's not that the pockets are going to be empty. Imagine like the person, their whole life they're filling up their pockets, right? But then they suddenly realize, like, after the transition out of like the material position, it's as if the person took off their pants. You know what I mean? It's like it didn't matter what was in their pockets. It was as if it was a dimension where the baggage didn't carry on to the next site, right? I would say that is way more like a being who is just content with their sight. They have access to an unconditional knowledge. So for me, I could tell this, that knowledge was never just accumulation. Knowledge is what you did with what you had while you had it. That's it. Knowledge, believe it or not, is the performance of temporary beings in an eternal mystery. So, the Gaian mind. what do we do with the Gaian mind? Like, imagine the planet talked to us. Imagine the planet was like, yo, human beings, what's up? And all our species was like, yo, did the planet just talk? Imagine 8 billion people. We just forgot all our wars. We forgot everything. And we're like, no way the planet is alive. And imagine the planet was alive and we're like, what is the planet saying? And the planet's like, stop stepping on my face. The planet's like, get off me, you freaks. Oh man. The Gaian mind, I'll be honest, those two words put together, I heard those two terms from Terence McKenna, but the term Gaia I had heard before, because since my youth I had an interest in Greek mythology. And Gaia, and the embrace of nature's mind. Imagine your whole moment is Morse code for an unknown watcher. How would life mean something to you then? As if like when I'm giving this talk, the audience hears my voice, but I hear myself. I also hear my voice. Now, where the voice is being heard, that's the non-local, unknown part of the mystery. There was a quote, oh my god, I don't know if I can find it. I think it was Aristotle. He said something about, come on, Google. Yeah, there we go. The energy of the mind is the essence of life, right? So Aristotle has this quote. He says the energy, I'll read the full quote. He says, the energy of the mind is the essence of life. Nothing in life is to be feared, it is only to be understood. Now is the time to understand more, so that we may fear less. Do not dwell in the past, do not dream of the future. Concentrate the mind on the present moment. Okay, I don't know if this is just Aristotle's quotes or this is a bunch of other quotes, but I know that the energy of the mind is the essence of life. That's Aristotle's quote. Right? So if the energy of the mind is the essence of life and the energy of the mind is causally unknown, that means our ability is waiting. We access the Gaian mind when we accept what nature has made. When one accepts nature, that means, do you believe how many people we have on this planet who are nature lovers, but they could hate themselves? The person loves nature, the person loves animals, the person loves trees and like the beauty of the outer realm, but when it comes to themselves, you know, it's like suddenly we forget we're a part of nature. We forget that we have naturally existed from the beginning. Language is just a luxury of a multidimensional attention. Acceptance of the known dimensions of your intelligence will cultivate an ability to wondrously and experientially come to accept the unknown. That means here's the strategy. Let's say you're a person, an average, a common man. You're going in life. Suddenly you have an experience that is uncommon. Let's say you have a multidimensional experience. Now, most people, they get an ego because the experience can't be meshed into the story they attribute to reality. The person gets a subconscious desire to see what's inside a box. That means you can say, just like how in shows like the child is like, what do you say? It's like, I don't know this is from my childhood, guys. I'm just remembering shows from my childhood for some reason. The inner child. The kid is told not to press the button. The kid is mischievous. The kid presses the button. Right? So similarly, it's like the esoteric person is told not to go to the esoteric. The esoteric person suddenly wants the esoteric. Right? Wants the spiritual, the transcendental. Right? And it's that ability to not care to press any buttons that you will smoothly navigate in your inner realms. It's hilarious. It's like we claim ourselves to be small, and our whole life we're fascinated by the big. If we claim ourselves to be the big, then there's nothing wrong with the small. You know? Because we're small and it's big, we freak out. But if we were big and it's like right now we're in the universe. Imagine the universe was in us, right? You know, as if the universe would be afraid of dying, not us. The universe would be afraid of dying to us rather than us dying to the universe. Can you imagine that? Okay, guys, in the chat section, says, and in real time, you hear your own voice returning to your ears while experiencing the words rolling off your tongue and out your mouth. Check this out. If you get comfortable watching your inner realms in silence, then it doesn't matter what movement happens, you notice your inner realms. The point I was making, that I listen to myself as I speak, it's just that we have no choice, right? This is where when a person, let's say a person was to, I don't know, curse at someone else, right? In like person A is shouting something at person B, and person A is like, F you, person B, And so that language is heard by the person's ears first. It's as if it's sound. It's common sense that the sound enters your own ears. So sound generated from the headquarters is returned back to the headquarters, right? So when a person speaks, they hear themselves. And I feel musicians, for example, singers you see in talent shows and YouTube videos, these singers are controlling their voice. Control has to be from an observer angle. That means it's like if I was if I was inside a coffee cup, I couldn't control the coffee cup. But because I'm outside of the coffee cup and I can observe it, I can move the coffee cup. So think of it that when a person speaks, there is some part of them outside of their speech, right? Now the cool thing is, my topic is that. There's a story I want to share. There was this king, and this king had this like nice palace hallway. And the king's like, these palace hallway, like the walls are empty. And he's like, I'm gonna go, and he's like, bring me two of the great, two artists, right? Bring me like, how would I say this story? There's this king, he wants like the walls painted of his palace hallway. And eventually two groups end up coming, right? Two groups of artists, right? And one group says, the king's like, this is your chance to prove yourself to the king of the kingdom. You know, draw the greatest painting you can and you will be rewarded and whatnot. And the two artist groups, they're like, thank you, my king. You know, we will get to it and something, right? And the king's like, okay, start. You know, I don't know, something. The king says something. And the king leaves the room. And the artists begin. Then the king comes and checks after a while, what are these doing? And he sees one of the groups, these two walls are facing one another, by the way, it's a hallway. So each artist group is given one wall to draw on. The king comes and sees one wall, like the artist is actually like one of the artists is drawing a next level story of kingdoms and palaces and just the history, and the artist has done his research of the king's lineage and is drawing that on the wall. On the other side, they just see the other artist group like just scrubbing the wall, doing something weird. And so some time passes and the king's like, time's up, you know? It's like, better make me smile right now. The king says, show me what you did, you know, moment of truth. And the artist comes that's finished the wall with the history, and it's like, you know, sire, this is like, I don't know, your whole life I drew on a wall, like you better give me, you know, you better respect this, like deep down he feels it. And the king's like, okay, good work, you've done something next level, I didn't expect this, you know. And then the king looks at the other side, and the geniuses on the other side, the other artists made the wall into a mirror, right? So they made the other wall into a pure reflection of a mirror, and the king's like, oh my god, like this reflection, this artwork is even more real, right? And I don't know, the king doesn't get it or something, you know. And so the king even's like, when I look at their art, when I look at this artwork, I'm behind the other artwork, you know. So the king actually declares the mirror, the one who made the other wall into a mirror, the winner, right? And you know, of course, this is not an inspiring story for artists, but I feel the same two walls of that palace can be suggested of what the mind is doing and what the body is doing. The body is doing something and the mind is reflecting it. And if attention was like a mirror and this mirror was pointed within, then it reflects the unknown. So that's another way of interpreting like human ability, that it's either reflecting what's in the inner realms or it's reflecting what's in the outer realms. And if there is something communicatable from the inner realms, that means it has ideological density. That means it stands as an idea. That means like the School of Athens, for example, the idea of the School of Athens, it was a painting. It was a painting done by Raphael, but the idea was like this. It was suggesting the Enlightenment and trying to suggest how the great philosophers and how all their ideas were kind of like all their contributions was like a School of Athens. So it was as if in concept, in this inner realms, the School of Athens existed. In the outer realms, it was just a painting on a wall. The Gaian mind is being, that's the biggest clue. We try to do things as a human being to comprehend the mind. But if we never did anything, the mind would not have identity. If the mind didn't have identity, what would be moving it? That's called the Gaian mind. The Gaian mind is like the universal event in accordance to, I don't know, how our atmosphere holds us. And it's a living reality. That means that's the advantage of being a human being. If we were robots, enlightenment was a program. Find the program, you're enlightened. But because it's a living reality and we are creatures that communicate, these are like the canals. These are the these are just the channels of communication, the rivers of communication accessible. That means either we can dehumanize and then be the world moving the self. We can humanize and be the self moving the world, but the burden of that is heavier because then it's like there's the fear of the individual death. So we gotta somehow be human and be selfless. And if we can solve this problem, and the solution I feel is going to be communication with the living. Eric says, I learned about Gaian mind through Central American culture. Is that term in common use in Asia? Okay. So first of all, Gaia is it's coming from a Greek term. It's the name of the earth. So Gaia is Greek metaphysics. Right? When we say the Gaian mind, it's literally wondering about the planetary mind. And I'll tell you, all cultures around the world have had a relationship with the planetary mind. It's just how they have concluded the relationship has been different. That means if the planet was a horse, for example, it's like communicating with the Gaian mind is like horse riding, right? The horse is alive. The horse is not an object, right? It's a living being. And so it's based on the interaction of the human being, the intent of the human being around the animal. Many people don't realize this, but your intent gives off an energy. I remember I visited Iran in 2016, and my older cousin of mine, who I hadn't seen for many years, he came to show me around. I was visiting for the summer, and he takes me to this shisha place, and we're there, and a few of his friends are there, and I've kind of walked towards philosophy, and those around me kind of know. So we start having this discussion on human nature, and suddenly my older cousin, he goes into this, like, I don't know how to explain it, false ideological pride. That means it's as if it's like the behavior of proudness that is not from his real self, And he starts talking kind of like a kind of subconscious showing off. Okay. Now, as we're going, and I remember, I don't know, I just tell him a story. Some of these stories I say in these talks. There was one of them I remember I specifically told him, which I felt it was like a spotlight. And his friend got the idea of the story, but my cousin kind of he wasn't in the same headspace. He was in this artificial resonance. He was literally on like a radio channel where he wasn't comfortable being first, then being a human. Do you know those people who are not comfortable with being? It becomes difficult to be a human being, right? If you're not comfortable with just being, right? So it's like way before a person even let's say humanizes properly, it's like they have to first be aware of energy, right? That's like the first relationship with our self is not that we are a skeleton, in like a skin capsule. What we are is energy, and a certain appearance of this energy is manifest. So anyways, so it was as if my cousin was on another kind of frequency, radio frequency, an insincere resonance. And usually in insincere resonance, there's karmic turbulence. We went out of the shisha place, and it was this kind of situation where in Persian culture, you don't pretty much you have to fight, not you have to, it's like out of just decency, right? Out of kindness, it's like embedded in the culture, you fight for the bill. Right? So it's like, no, I got this, man. It's like, and he's like, no, I got this, right? And so my cousin's pride took that moment, and so we leave, and my cousin's talking, he's coming down the stairs, we're leaving this shisha place to go outside, and he starts talking about something and laughing with this, I don't know how to say it, this kind of laughter of like, looking down on laughter. I don't know how to say it. And this insect out of nowhere hits him in the face. And his own friend beside me looks at him and says, "Hey man, your heart's impure." This was all in Farsi. I don't know how to say it. But it was so shocking that the moment my cousin stepped out of that place, this bug literally it was like a kind of like a missile. Like it just hit him in the head. Right? A bug. And it was just this strange thing, and you know what it is? That was an example of him not being in tune with the Gaian mind. I've experienced moments where I haven't been in tune with the Gaian mind. Angry children in this world, they all experience karmic ignorance. False pride breaks down in front of sincerity. Really. So it wasn't, and guys, I wouldn't say it wasn't just karma, it was bad piloting. It wasn't that he was a bad person. It was that it was as if he wasn't surfing properly, or he was like, if he was on a saddle on a horse, he was hitting the horse too harshly, right? And that's what I'm saying, that it's like, this is the difference. I honestly, I felt it was a blessing that I learned, I got introduced to the concept of mysticism, because mysticism gave me, I shouldn't say it gave me, it made me realize that there is nothing wrong with the unknown watching. And I can't tell you how much of a supernova resolve that was, right? It doesn't mean the person doesn't search for knowledge, right? I'm not saying the person says, okay, everything's unknown, there's nothing to do here. I'm not saying like that. I'm saying it's the mystery. It's like, what is the most sophisticated energy? Like, human beings don't have magic, but we have states of mind, right? We have mindsets. Those are the closest things that comes to like different people's magical ability, different people's mindsets. You know what I mean? How their attention is on the reality, pretty much. And in the story, like in that Black Clover anime thing I was saying, everybody was born with a unique type of magic. Guess what? Everybody is born with a unique type of mindset and identity. So our identity, who we are, is like we're all X-Men, but in the inner realms. we are, you know, in theory, X-Men. I had a moment where I wasn't in tune with the Gaian mind, and it was literally, I was young and I was in a soccer field, and a soccer ball hit me straight in the head. You know, it was an unforgettable recess thing where it just hit me in the head, where it kind of just felt, you know what it felt like? It felt familiar. It was as if, sometimes that's the thing about karma, where I think if the person truly notices the energy, as if imagine you push someone, and you know, I don't know, a day goes by and somebody comes and pushes you exactly in the same way, and you're like, what just happened? I inputted something into the void, and it outputted back. So then it becomes kind of a totally different management of energy, right? If people realize that anything, any sort of movement, communication, and just navigation of attention is expression of some sort. Life is, you know, it's as if the person doesn't get to do what they want, at least life got to do what it wanted. People consider 4 types of victory. That means whoever you are on this planet, as if the species needs to advance in 4 areas, let's say. We have the known world, we have the known self, we have the unknown self, the unknown world. Imagine we divided all of academia and knowledge to this. Anybody who discovered something about an unknown self, it was instantly taken seriously, you know? If it was something about an unknown world, for example, theoretical physicists, they're pretty much fathoming unknown worlds. They're pretty much, you know, like, this is to me like a proper theoretical physicist. You know, that it looks at it slaps the imagination of others out of their hand, but then goes and sits but gets paid to imagine. So everything is theory. It's like all of life is potential energy becoming kinetic energy. Eric says, do you think that the Gaian mind, in the chat section, Eric says, do you think that the Gaian mind created COVID to protect itself from humanity? I think COVID is a concept, right? Like if we were not human, we wouldn't even conceptualize it, right? Like if we were robots right now, we wouldn't care. We wouldn't even have the concept. Like it could be like the disease COVID-19 is here, but it wouldn't relate to us, right? So as a concept, we're responsible for its idea in our psychology, for the position of the idea in our psychology. But in regards to the outer realms, why it's happening, I don't know. I feel it could be that it's training the species. Like there was a time, I'll be honest, I thought if there has to be a pioneering event for suits in the future. And I feel it was like this had to happen, right? It just had to, kind of like the first mistake has to happen so everybody learns from. You know, even though the concept of plagues, like it's been here before, like in history, there's the idea of the Black Plague, and there were these doctors, let me see, plague doctors, and they had something, let me see if I can find the picture. Come on. Can't find this picture, guys. Okay, I can't find the picture, but pretty much these plague doctors had a mask and they would have herbs inside it. I feel all of these efforts, you could say the Gaian mind is trying to prepare us to wear suits. Can you imagine the pollution of the earth potentially becoming so bad that you literally have to wear a suit? Wear the air, the oxygen inside, an oxygen suit outdoors, imagine. Right, so I feel like us wearing a mask is kind of pioneering, kind of pulling towards that direction where we eventually build technologies up to that level. And you know, as Friedrich Nietzsche says, what doesn't kill us makes us stronger. It doesn't make us stronger, it just confirms our immortality for now. So really, where attention goes, nature has moved, you know. If there's destiny, then karma doesn't make sense, right? Because it's predestined, as if it's already there. It's like a program written, as if we're in a simulation. This simulation was coded from before. So it doesn't matter what you do inside it. There's, you know, destiny is like the program of the universe. I have experienced moments where there has been ability. I've noticed that, like, when there's a crowd, my attention is different. But when I'm alone, my attention is completely different. You know, when I'm talking alone, it's as if it's way more instantaneous with the inner realms. Less the attention is less on the outer realms. But if the person is speaking, for example, in public, then the attention has to be on the outer realms, right? And it's as if every mind in the room is like an unknown universe listening. You know, it's as if like even though this is like on one level a simple podcast, but it's like imagery from the inner realm of one human being is kind of like a satellite from my universe, leaving my universe, is entering the listener's universe. And let's say a person spoke to the Gaian mind. Let's say, you know, the person woke up and it was a shamanic morning. And they were like, all right, Gaian mind, what's up? What are you up to, Gaian mind? And imagine the Gaian mind, it's like, don't worry about it, I got it. You know, just, you know, walk your walk for now, you know. Or the person communicates to the Gaian mind, the shaman goes into this heavy meditation and it's like, all right, nature, tell me your will. And nature's like, I'm busy right now, come back in a little bit. And the shaman's like, it took me centuries to master this technique to come into the state of mind to communicate to the Gaian mind. And the Gaian mind's like, I'm busy right now, don't you get it? There's a dimension to life which is experiential. For that, no language can replace that. It's really the effort and the will of the person and how energy from within goes without, quietly. In regards to, I would say, the outer realms, and to somehow lead this back into ability and how ability is faded. If we are not, let's say if the planet is alive, the planet, imagine, listens to itself first before listening to us. Let's say if creatures or if human beings are selfish, guess what? Imagine like the planet was selfish, right? The planet wanted to take back what it gave, imagine. So it would be a way where the planet's decision is the human ability, right? So it would be as if like the ability of a square is being decided from a cubic dimension. You know, it would be something like that. It could be the whole universe is like an organism, right? Like it's a universal organism, just like how our cells in our body are connected and the nerves and everything communicate. There's like this super complex system of you know, electromagnetic relay in the whole body. So it's kind of like being part of the, like if we were cells inside the veins of the universe, then it would be as if the Gaian mind is our ability, right? Like how healthy the universe, if the universe is eating its vegetables, then humanity has a chance. Yeah. my God, guys, this was on mute and I was talking. Oh, God. So I don't know how much people heard, and I don't want to go back and listen to the talk again. So I'll just repeat in case this could be a repeat, or it kind of, you know, I accidentally had it on mute. So, and anyways, Eric, just the resolution to my response to your question. Persian thought is a Persian ancient Persian ideology is a totally different response than Buddhist, right? You can say Buddhism and Hinduism, they are closer. They're like kids born in the same generation, right? But ancient Persian ideology is, and even to wonder about the cultural significance of Zoroastrianism. I'll see if I can dedicate an episode. Interesting consideration. You know, in the chat section it says, do you consider the Gaian mind same as the soul of the world? The Gaian mind is when you feel your movement is the planet's movement, and you notice that in yourself. So you notice yourself moving inseparable to the whole planet, to the whole moment, right? Because our greatest ability to fathom, it's like we're a candle with a certain glow in a dark room. Now, it's based on what we find in this glow that we have a relationship with the Gaian mind, or how fearlessly, as Carl Jung was inspiring the minds of the future generations to actually explore the unconscious, right? The more we want things to be known in a specific way, the less reasons we have to actually try new things to explore. So in this life, there's something of the mysterious here, you know. If the unknown wasn't here, and imagine we all knew, imagine we knew everything. Imagine we just knew everything, the whole universe, its edges, we had just everything in this universe we knew in the outer realms, right? The only thing we wouldn't know would be what else we could do with all the knowledge that we already know. So my effort with this episode, folks, was to say that human ability is really a mystery. Sometimes it's as if you can't interfere with the karma of certain moments. Like that scene in Star Wars where one of the characters, like, it was like the force is strong in this one, like to a Jedi that had beat a bunch of drones or something. So it's as if the force is strong. Why? Because this character has a bigger plot line in the conscious universal existence, and because of that further plot line in conscious reality, it's as if, imagine if the universe was painting human vision. It's like it's not up to the human being to know when it's complete, right? We are paintbrushes, or the poet Rumi, a term synonymous to the word flute is also straw, right? They would call it nay. So the poet Rumi was saying, had this vision that he was like the flute for the divine, as if some sort of universal intelligence was translating through human, through the human being as music. That means it's like music is I don't know. This may be a bold statement, but maybe music is really how we know the extraterrestrial put its foot on Earth. Like, if extraterrestrials are perceived as space, you know, that changes our understanding. All the movies where we were afraid of aliens, you know, oh my God, what's that in our sky? Is that a metal disc? Why? Oh my God. Like, all those movies will suddenly become meaningless if the concept of the extraterrestrial is just the space is not human space. Do you know what I mean? That means the alien is not an object or a subject. We are an object and subject and are wondering, oh my God, what's beyond us? Kind of like fish in an ocean, wondering about the nature of the ocean that holds the truth. And then, honestly, this is a story. It's like these smaller fish go to this older fish and they're like, hey, older, wiser fish, that's, I don't know, sleeping under a coral. Tell us, what is God? What is truth? What is this ocean that everybody's worshipping, right? And the older fish is like, guys, come on, like, it's everywhere. It's like this ocean is everywhere. It's not a concept. And they're like, God has to be a bigger fish. It has to be a whale or something. You know, it's like, that's why there's some people who are known to go, some fish are known to go and swim beside whales. And constantly this older fish says, no, it's everywhere. The truth you're seeking is nature itself happening. Right? That surpasses language. So, our ability is a mystery. But it is something which, if reality is treated like a notebook, it has to be written. That means it's like, before I came to give this talk, I had a vision of like, how am I gonna feel at the end of it? I don't know in what school of thought I heard this from, but it was this idea like, life is like, once you get over the suffering, it becomes an opportunity. And that opportunity is just a response. All of life can be summed down to the response of intelligence to itself. And I feel it can be evoked. Eric in the chat section mentioned Hinduism and Buddhism. This is where the ability Buddha received was, Buddha noticed the inner realms. In Hinduism, the ability they would receive was advanced projections, right? So Brahmanism had its value, right? Because in the inner psychology, the ritual had to have a karmic consequence, right? What that means is, if a person like puts like color on their face, like if there's mustard on their face, they go look in the mirror, they're going to see a reflection with mustard on its face. And you could say in the level of ritualism, it was as if like that ritual was like a mustard on their face, and the person would look at their reflection and be like, oh my God, there's mustard on my face, I'm a new self now. But the Buddha noticed this was an incomplete, inefficient way of things happening, right? So the Buddha came to the conclusion that if everybody's trying to start a way towards truth, let me just stop and see what is. You know, what is being. And I feel that's where it clicked for him, that there is more to the view. That means the object of observance and the observer are being attributelessly witnessed, and that is true mysticism. This is how far we are as a species. That means it's like, because the moment you are watching a self with attribute, the watcher can't have an attribute. If the watcher has the same attribute, it is that, right? So what I'm saying is, the human experience is reaching a point where it's as if like, whoa, what is this? We're like, who is this? Is this even a who? Is this an event of nature? Like, we are our behavior is so different from all animals in nature that we really can't call ourselves animals. It's like we may look like an animal, but we don't behave like one. Like, you know, who knew, looking at all the species on this earth, one of these species would build a skyscraper and then like a sky city or something. Anyways, I would say one last thing. My relationship with ability is also elemental. I feel my emotions, when they change, I can identify with them through narrative. The person can say, I feel sad, or the person can say, I feel happy, or they could have no story for it and treat it as elemental energy. That means happiness is like the person feels their presence is active. Regardless of what happens to the personality, there is a presence moving. But sadness would be the opposite. The sadness is a personality noticing its own hollowness, right? Humility is the greatest teacher. Why? Because it doesn't want before it has seen. Anyways, guys, thanks for listening. I hope this episode was helpful, and everybody has abilities. We just don't know what they are. And their activation, I feel it's kind of like riding the waves of karma. That means in the Bhagavad Gita they say, if you are selfless when you do an action, it has no karma. And it makes sense, because who has karma? If there's no sense of self, who has a karma, right? Why is it that if a robot like destroys a building accidentally, we don't destroy the robot, right? The robot is allowed to, because it's like the robot, do you know what I mean? It's like the inanimateness of it justifies its allowance of its wrong. And the Gaian mind could be our own eyes, by the way, right? It could be that there is no person here, and from the beginning it's been the planet's dream. It's like what happens when a planet dreams. Civilizations rise and fall. What happens when a planet wakes up? We realize we're in a universal dream. We realize we're in a galactic dream, a solar. You know, it's a constant relationship with the small and the big. That's really karma, isn't it? We feel we're small, we want to be big, right? People think about karma when the small can't become big, or when the big becomes small, right? That's the karma. So if you're big, your karma, like logically, like you're left to experience being small. If you're small, you're left to experiencing you're big. So the more behaviorally the person is small, it's like, I don't know how to say it, this relationship of the small and big is pretty much all of life. And that's the wheel of karma. The small constantly wanting to be big, and the big endlessly dividing into the small. You know what it is? Like karma is like we add +1 and then we subtract 1. And then we add +1, then we subtract 1. And we're like, what is this chaos and order nullification of the soul's journey? Like, do you know? So at some point I feel human beings will just step out of the linguistic simulation. We will snap out of it, that we are not language. And the moment we do, we will begin, it would be a moment where synchronicities like the volume knob of a speaker will amp up. Because it becomes way more easier for the inner realms and outer realms to be in sync once the person doesn't have a specific outer realm expectation. right? That means it doesn't mean not to have a plan. A person can have a strategy, but the person can't have an expectation of the strategy because they know their strategy has to be fully implemented to land. As if like any person who has been told they've done a good job or a bad job, it's as if the wise person knows until their last breath they don't know if they did a good job or a bad job. That's how long the effort is. And in this show, Black Clover, I was speaking about, the characters in the show would constantly come to their breaking point, and they would become hopeless, and they would get to this point of despair and anguish, and then they would suddenly get motivated by being, it's like, what's my backup plan when I have no backup plan? Surpass my limits, because what other choice is there for the living? Right? And if we can surpass our limits as a species, and we move to an era where there is no need for student-teacher Shakespearean plays, you know, and reality becomes just, and it's like we recognize, like there is a joy, I don't know what it is, maybe it's my idiosyncrasy, but there is something about a wilderness we came from, right? The species grew from a wilderness. That wilderness has become dormant, and now more than ever this wilderness needs to be wielded in the inner realms. That means we have to somehow rekindle the hyper attention we had when we were in the jungle, do you know? And that hyper attention being activated in our inner realms, though. That means imagine all that energy people are giving to be violent in the outer realms, it goes in the inner realms. Imagine all those people who were athletes and then they retired, those athletes now trying to be athletes in the inner realms. And ability has to do with exploration. That means it's like, ask yourself your own curiosity, right? It's as if a person knows themselves, they can judge themselves. But when they realize if there's like just one tiny unknown variable to yourself, the person can't know who they are. That's the truth of it, really. You know, it's as if if there's a hole in the ship, the whole ship's gonna sink. If there's one unknown variable in our logic, and guess what that unknown variable is? The hard problem of consciousness. I don't know if David Chalmers, the philosopher who came up with this idea, knows this, but he responded indirectly. I honestly feel like totally indirectly. He responded to the Nietzschean warning of God is dead, and it was man that killed him, right? So Friedrich Nietzsche, this German philosopher, has this quote that it's not that God is dead, it's just that the way we were looking at God in a certain way, the reverence behind the ideology, it's like that spirit has left the land, you know, especially when TVs were on discount. Language is just like food for the mind. Honestly, it's like food. It's like the body, the stomach, as an organ, digests like food. The brain, as an organ, digests vision. Right? And it digests novelty. That means it's like, as a mind, especially now that the mind's life is activated, the person has to go into the cultivating mindset. The cultivating mindset means the first thing is the person makes their own self their ally. It doesn't matter, I'm going to say it for the sake of I've met, there's many kinds of people on this planet. Just to implement a universal strategy, the advancement in communication means discretion with the relationship of self with self and self with world. People who have a bad relationship with themselves, if they see others, they cannot care. That means a person who's, let's say, experienced violence, for them, violence has, because they've been exposed to it, has become a norm. But for someone who their mind hasn't been exposed to violence, like, that's an intensity. A lot of people are using metaphysics as clothing in today's world, as just self-expression, but its true nature is the unknown. That's humanity's greatest challenge. That means if there was an argument to unite human beings, it would go something like this, where it would be like, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. But this enemy that is the enemy of every human being is, I'm using the term enemy, but it's not per se an enemy, it's just a challenge. Right? The enemy of our enemy is the exploration of the truth of nature. In this other anime show called Shingeki no Kyojin, there was a character who they had just pretty much realized the startling truth, the messed up truth about the universe the characters were in. And one of the characters named Levi, he looks at this commander who's in like this hospital bed, and he says, Erwin, why are you laughing? Like, they realize the messed up truth, right? And Erwin's like, well, excuse me, Erwin's not laughing, says, why are you smiling? And Erwin says, because now, by knowing the truth, whether it was good or bad, we have taken one step closer. With this information, it's like the commander was pretty much saying, like, even though it was a messed up truth, a messed up fact, but this fact was helping get to the ultimate fact, the truth, you know? So what I'm trying to say is, sometimes moments, this is where patience comes in, where a moment doesn't have meaning until many moments ahead, like a journey. Like, a person can't step out of, their front door and expect to be at the destination of wherever they want to go, right? So it's like we have to live through the journey. Now, in the inner realm, you can say it's also a living through the journey. And when a person communicates, that's really what's happening. It's an inner realm journey. Attention is like a double-edged blade. In the inner realms, it is being instantaneously the landscape. In the outer realms, there's a delay. It's like the object. Anyways, I feel the point has been made. And so, as instruments of nature, may we learn to see like our potential, right? Like, that's the whole point of an instrument, to see how advanced the sound generated from it can be. And so we're like human beings living, and it should be a curiosity for the self to be like, how advanced, like how far can my eyes go in this realm, right? Like how deep is it? So anyways, guys, thanks for listening. I hope this talk was helpful. And also thanks for the support in the chat section. And I'll be on Discord for those interested. Namaste. And one last thing, the fastest way to ability is to realize you already have it. That means the ability is in the room before you are. You need to adjust to the ability rather than use the ability. You have to adjust your attention to how the ability is moving. Imagine like a force, like a wave, where the attention serves. Anyways, guys, thanks for listening. Namaste.